welcome everyone to the 9th TELx reoccurring meeting. These reoccurring meetings provide several critical functions for our governance. They provide transparency to the community. They create structure for our forums. They provide authors the ability to present their proposals to the council and community. It allows the council and community to review, debate, refine these proposals so that we can get to a place where we have some consensus and a mutual understanding. They provide a medium for regular TELx ecosystem updates. They ensure consistent communication between council members and the community, and they allow the community to directly engage in Q&A with us, the council members. The TELx Council is a local governance organization with authority over and duties towards TELx operational rules, system health, and the social well-being of the ecosystem. So overview, it accepts, develops, and votes on TELx IPs to change or introduce new elements to TELx, to alter TELx harvesting rules, and is responsible for generally representing the interests of and informing their constituencies in matters pertaining to TELx. So those duties for us as the TELx Council are required to, 1, plan, finance, coordinate, implementation of improvements to the TELx ecosystem. 2, regulate the flow of TEL issuance throughout TELx to be harvested by liquidity miners. 3, introduces, alters, and enforces TELx operational rules, including harvesting, informational and communication, maintenance and construction. And 4, informs miners of the activities and outcomes related to TELx and results from any snapshot votes. These snapshot votes are a requirement for all council members, and in order for a proposal to move forward, there needs to be a 5 out of 6 majority vote, and all 6 members voting within 5 days from the start of it being posted. So looking at the agenda for today, we'll have a recap of last meeting. We can get some updates on the TELx IPs with the snapshots and updates on kind of costing, timing, all that kind of stuff. And then just some stuff that we talked about as well last week, along with some of the discussion that we had within our group chat on Discord about maybe some potential upcoming proposals to review and discuss. Then we can open it up to the Q&A with the community, and then just confirm timing for everybody else for the next scheduled meetings. So looking at the recap of March 5th. So all proposals were going to snapshot except for Ty's single asset provision one. And the reason behind that was just because of the high cost. So the cost was coming in at $24K. Obviously, with the price of Telcoin dropping, by over 50% from the last time we had our discussion, obviously that's going to have a huge impact as well on the budget. So we've kind of put that one on the back burner for now, but we'll keep it in our back pocket for future use, as I still think it's a good idea in general, just to make things a little bit more simple. But just obviously the costs a little bit too high at this time. So we did get some updates on contract work for V4 with Mike's 2 proposals. So we're talking about maybe 15 hours in contract work that would be additional to what we had kind of budgeted already, which would be about $1,500 US. There's potential for audit costing, but Leo is currently looking in to see if we can use one that is already audited and ready to go. And then we'll obviously have the BAL and DFX pools being deprecated, and the estimated timeline would be around kind of May 2025. So we were waiting on some timing costing updates for Grant's from Grant on Will's secondary safe, the operational one that we were talking about, which I do have an update on. And then on the data and analytics one as well. So I did get updates from Grant on that too. And then lastly, we kind of talked about a couple of different things. One, the mapping of TEL to Arbitrum, the potential proposal, probably for year 3 and beyond, but incentivizing GSMA members to integrate TELx into their apps, similar to what the TAN Council is looking to do on their side to help them out as well. So contracts for TAO to work on TELx IPs and what that process is. So I did ask that question in the Platform Council last week. We did get an update from Parker that basically said each proposal is essentially like a work order and a workflow. So each individual one will have its own invoice and all that kind of stuff, and we'll have the ability to pay those out from that operational wallet once we get access to it. And then we also talked at length too just about budgeting and how we manage the assets within the budget, and whether or not we wanted to use some of those funds potentially in LPs to gain a yield. And hopefully the goal obviously there would be to increase the amount of TEL for the budget as well. So before I kind of get into the updates on the TELx IPs that I got from Grant and Leo, did anybody have any questions, comments, or anything that they wanted to bring up?
I'm all good.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm good as well.
Okay, sounds good. Easy enough. Well, congratulations, gentlemen. We did have all 4 of our TELx IPs that went to Snapshot voted on with the required quorum, everybody voting yes. So I know it took us a while to kind of get one off the ground, but we shot from the hip and got all 4 of them done in a pretty quick time. So happy and pleased to see the process there and how everything worked. So on some updates on the new V4 pools for Polygon and Base, the Base implementation to provide similar functionality to the current staking contract has been started by Amir. And he's also been in contact with Uniswap to discuss hooks to see what we can do in terms of enabling the liquidity miners to vote through any snapshot proposals like the liquid delegation one that we had last week. So we're just waiting on getting some updates from Uniswap and Amir on that. And the beauty of trying to use what Uniswap already has in place would be that we're not having to use any other funds to do any potential audits on something that we would have to potentially create. So not only does it save time for the developers to put that hook together, but it would also save I'm assuming on the costing side from any audits that we would have to do. So
can I just ask, would we not still, from a security point of view, need to get these third-party hooks audited, or is Uniswap actually verifying that there's no malicious code hidden anywhere in those hooks?
I would assume that if they have hooks that we can kind of plug into, that they would already be audited. It's a good question. I don't know for sure with 100% certainty whether or not they are audited or not. But maybe once we get some feedback back from Amir and the conversations that he's having with the Uniswap team, we can ask that question and see if additional audits need to be done. If that's the case, I would assume that the cost would be even lower though, if all we have to do is just make sure we're running from a security malicious perspective as opposed to auditing the entirety of the code. But I guess we kind of have to wait and then hear back from Amir on that. Okay. What else? Yeah, so that's the V4 pool. So I guess we're just waiting to hear back on that. Again, timing. If we do hear back within the next week or two, I think the goal would be to try to get these up and running for the beginning of the May cycle. So we are starting to see a little bit more volume actually on the Polygon side going into the V4 pool versus V3. So those pools, I guess, are already created. No work really needed to be done there. It would just be more education on the V3, V4 side of things versus the current V2 that we have with Balancer. But
can I just add here? I think because I'm a bit nervous bringing this up, but because of the voting during that recent liquid delegation, I actually had no voting power because I had pulled my liquidity out of the pools that I was in, one being the DFX, to put into Uniswap to trial out all these new V3, V4 pools. So I was caught in a position where personally I couldn't vote as a liquidity miner in the elections because all my liquidity was in Uniswap. So there's two aspects, isn't there, to the Uniswap integration? There's the just making sure people can vote if they've got liquidity outside of Balancer. And then there's the hook stuff, which is maybe a little bit more complicated and will take maybe more digging. So I think if we're talking to Amir, we should stress that the enabling the voting aspect is maybe more important than integrating with hooks, if you see where I'm coming from, because there
I
may
don't
be
think
maybe
from like
another
a
liquid
fee.
delegation election.
No, I hear you. I think from like the rewards distribution aspect, like we think we've all agreed that it's going to be based off of fees earned within that certain period, whether it's a weekly period or whatever we determine that that cadence is going to be. But from that, like we can do that off chain. Like I don't think we need to add a hook into like a V3, V4 contract in order to do that. Like that can all be done off chain. And then basically what we're doing is distributing the allocations to a smart contract, like a staking contract through TELx, where the individual liquidity miners can connect their wallets to TELx and claim on a week-to-week basis or whatever the cadence is going to be directly from TELx. So I don't think we need to add a hook from that perspective. The only hook that we currently need to look at is specific to that the voting for snapshots within the governance structure. So at this point, that would be the only hook that I think we need to add. I know, Ty, we've kind of talked about something a little bit more with what you're thinking about coming to the table with. I know you're just waiting to hear back from the team on. So that might be an additional hook that we would have to do, but let's talk about that when we've got a little bit more details on that one. Really it's just adding that hook to make sure that we can have the people that are supplying liquidity to V3, V4 have that ability to vote in those snapshot votes, just because it is so different now that V2 from Balancer, you basically get liquidity pool tokens, and those liquidity pool tokens are what you're using, essentially to vote. Whereas you don't get liquidity pool tokens when you go to these new V3, V4 pools on Balancer. You're getting an NFT, which details the liquidity provision that you have in there. So we just need to make sure that those NFTs are compatible with Snapshot, and we can redirect the value of that liquidity for those liquidity miners into the voting process for governance.
Yeah, you see, I think we've got to be careful here, because I don't think, from my understanding, that a hook is what you need to enable that voting aspect. A hook is something that you add to your position when you create it that modifies the functionality of your actual position. What we're talking about, I think, in terms of enabling the voting, may be able to be done off chain as well.
Well, if that's the case and we don't have to add a hook for that, then that's better, because then, again, the more hooks we're adding, the more complexity we're adding to the system, the more chances there are for the vulnerabilities to be within that, right? So if Amir comes back and says that we can put a voting structure for Snapshot in with Uniswap V3, V4 pools without having to do anything, then that's all the better for me. Because then again, there's no development work that we have to do from that perspective. There's no auditing costs we have to worry about from that perspective. And then it's just maybe adjusting some of the functionality with Snapshot or how it gets done. But I'd say before we go into too much of the weeds on that, let's wait to hear back from Amir, Leo, or Grant with some updates and kind of take it from there.
So we are expecting that within maybe a week. So we should have more clarity in time for next meeting.
I would say hopefully for next meeting. In talking to Leo, he did mention that Amir's off for this week, or maybe it was Grant that had mentioned that. But yeah, I think Amir is off this week, so he's probably going to get back into everything probably next week. So, hopefully we get some updates and some feedback from him or somebody else on the team by then. So,
cool. Thanks, sir. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Also, in talking to Grant about the Dune Analytics, he did mention that the team is working on the dashboards. There isn't much to share at the moment, which is fine. And once we get some updates there, I'm assuming some of us from the council will likely be working directly with the tower, the developers, just to help organize and get everything set up for the Dune Analytics. I'll obviously spend enough time as I need to, but obviously help from the rest of you guys would be beneficial, I think, as well. On the next one for Will's proposal, the operational wallet, Grant's latest update was that it's been done. He said we'll deploy the new TELx operational wallet by this Friday. And then essentially the 10 million TEL that was, budgeted to us as part of the year 2 budget approval has already been sent to our, first safe. So we'll just have to make that transfer. So I did ask whether or not they're going to transfer it or we're going to transfer it. He did say that we should have access to be able to transfer it. So then I think we'll just have to have a conversation about the multi-sig functionality and all that kind of stuff, and just get some practice and education on that. Again, I've never used a multi-sig before, so I'll just have to go through the motions on that. But I'm sure we could all figure that out. So by the end of this week, we should have an update on that operational wallet, and then kind of take it from there. Okay.
Great news.
Go ahead, Will.
Great news. I mean, it's great that it's gone so fast and that it's operational already. That's great.
Yeah, they can move quick. I don't know how hard it is to open up a new safe, new wallet, but it's appreciated with the TAL what they're doing and how quickly they can respond to things, especially coming back. I know everybody was probably a little bit jet lagged and tired from a busy week in Barcelona with MWC, but I think everybody's getting their legs back underneath them and hitting the ground running, so it's a good sign. Okay, so just looking at the agenda, we talked about snapshots, we talked about updates on projects, upcoming proposal reviews. Mike, maybe I'll just throw it to you. I know last time we talked about it, the mapping I think was already done for Arbitrum, but you were waiting on the logo and kind of the final touch points. Maybe I'll pass it to you and you can give us an update on that.
Yeah, hasn't been an update to the token data on Arbiscan yet for that. Amir had sent a request. Now, a lot of times these things get put in a queue unless you pay for a priority request. So if we don't intend to push into Arbitrum, then we don't really intend to spend the money for priority to get the token data showing properly. Although the request has been made, but we're just just don't want to pay for that VIP experience if it's just for the sake of doing it, rather than for actual pool launch or liquidity launch that we want to try to accomplish. So at this point, it's still in queue. The token data has not been updated. It still has an unknown reputation on Arbitrum. So there hasn't been any movement on that in the 20 days that the TEL has been sitting on Arbitrum. So hopefully that'll happen soon. If not, then we'll have to. But ultimately, we have to decide if that's something we want to do. If we put that, if we want to put that to a vote and move liquidity and think Arbitrum is a great path, then we would then push forward on that if it wasn't ready.
Do we know what the cost of expediting the process is?
I'll find out. I'll have to ask Amir because we did that for base, and I don't know what the cost was. But that was a cost that
Okay.
Holdco paid just for the sake of getting it done. But so when to kind of figure out the budgeting and who's paying for what in these situations, right? So that's where that stands.
Yeah. Okay.
I like the idea, and I think there'd be some support for doing a pool on Binance Smart Chain for sort of the same logic that we did Base, is kind of increasing the exposure to a high volume network that also has a central exchange. So that is something I saw you mentioned in the comments in the chat.
Just while we're on the
subject, while we're talking about that, we could talk about that too, because I did post kind of like that volume, weekly changes, volume over 24 hours, and recently it looks like Binance Smart Chain has taken over kind of the top spot. Solana has dropped a little bit, like it looks like most of them have dropped a bit outside of Binance Smart Chain, but Arbitrum is there too in fourth. So I wouldn't be opposed to adding some liquidity on Arbitrum. I would just say if we had to pick between Arbitrum and BSC, I probably prefer to go BSC first. But sure. I don't know. What's everybody else's thoughts? I know we're kind of moving pretty quickly with hopping chain to chain and trying to provide and increase liquidity. On
the other sort of consideration that's out there, and I believe that I'm going to help Paul write up the proposal, but I think it's going to be Paul's proposal is going to be for stable EXYZ, like digital cash incentives for like USDC, EMXN, like initially, and then trying to incentivize high volume remittance pool, like remittance corridors. So that would be something that could be coming by next meeting. I think we're going to try to do it for this week, but he's obviously with the team at Blockworks Digital Asset Summit this week, and I think he has a speaking role today, and he's pretty busy at the moment. But I'll get together with him by the end of this week or early next week and see what he has in mind for that, and maybe he can come into our next meeting and propose his ideas surrounding incentivization of stable, the digital cash. So let's keep that. That's just something to think about, like, as a platform growth opportunity to incentivize liquidity for those cross-border payments and stuff and such. So that's pretty cool stuff, and we'll get Paul involved with that because it's all kind of that's his baby. So
Mike, about the digital cash pools, do you know where they're going to be hosted? Will it be on DFX with their special?
No,
special
it'll all be on Uniswap, and so the Emirex, which is the Arbitrum. There's like forex settlement. Like all this digital cash will be backed, one for one, and so it would not be using DFX. It would be using mostly Uniswap pools, and then Emirex for arbitrage and settlement.
Okay.
Yeah.
And by the way, Boo had a question for you in the chat. He asked if there was an alternative to Arbiscan, as it no longer works.
Oh, there are alternatives to Arbiscan.
I was just looking at it, and Arbiscan.io works for me.
Yeah, it works for me.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I don't know. We do have. I mean, there is TEL on. There's 100 TEL on Arbitrum, so maybe you probably can't search for the token. I don't know what happened if you just put the ticker symbol in.
Well, I'm not seeing anything yet. It's not popping up if I look for point or TEL, but
yeah.
Well, so something comes up, but it's definitely not what we want.
Yeah, it'll be, and that would be part of like that token data situation, making sure that that's up to speed, just like we have on Base now, and where you can just type in the ticker and it pops up. But Arbiscan is currently functional for me.
Yeah, it seems to be working for me too. But yeah, Mike, if you get an update on what that cost would be to kind of expedite the process, then at least we can collectively
I'll
make
find
a
out.
decision whether or not it's worth paying for or not, or we
Sure.
just wait.
Yeah.
But let's see and kind of go from there. But
And I think the other thing that we need to drill on down on is on the Binance Smart Chain thing is the U.S. The ability for U.S. citizens to participate, what the compliance situation looks like with that. I don't know if there's anything there or not. There used to be, but maybe all that's gone away. Do you guys know anything about that?
sorry, I was just making notes. Do you mind repeating yourself?
Oh, I was just saying, I think I'm kind of curious if Binance, because obviously the heat they got into with the Treasury Department. If there's any, as a U.S. citizen, it doesn't apply to everybody, but as a U.S. citizen, if there'd be any restrictions from participating in DeFi on Binance Smart Chain. I don't know if that was a thing at one point where you were sort of prohibited to participate on Binance Smart Chain as a U.S. citizen, and you had to use a VPN and all this crazy stuff. But I don't know if that's still a thing or not.
Yeah, I'm
so
not familiar with that. I didn't know they can
Yeah.
restrict access to, activity on a chain. Like I know from a centralized exchange, they can deny you access to get onto it. But like if you transfer funds to, a different blockchain, I wasn't aware of any limitations that they can put on you for using that specific chain. But
Okay.
hopefully
Yeah,
that's
I
not
don't
still the
know.
case.
Yeah. I hope not. I don't think it probably isn't, but it's something a hiccup we may run into.
I was going to say, if that's a challenge, then that might be a bad thing for us trying to get, potentially some new pools and liquidity increasing on there.
Interesting. Okay.
Okay. Any other comments on kind of, looking at, BSC or Arbitrum for additional pools?
Yeah, well, about BSC, I'm not really comfortable with going there because of their very bad reputation. But I guess if it could enhance our probability of getting listed on Binance, I'd go for it. But I'm not sure. But if there's enough volume and interest about the TEL token, I guess we could give it a try.
Ty, you have any thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think there was. I think I heard there used to be a problem regarding kind of scams and security breaches on BSC, but I think that's improved over the last couple of years, and I think they've really tightened up on the security aspect of the chain. So maybe those concerns. I know there used to be a lot of issues with BSC, but I think it's better now. How better, I'm not sure, but I think it's better. I heard. I did read somewhere that PancakeSwap had overtaken Uniswap at some stage for, was it volumes going through or TV? I don't think it would be TVL, but it would be probably transaction volumes. Last week it overtook. It was one of the leaders. So I think exploring into other chains, we've got to be clear on what our objectives are in doing that. But I think it's all good, and we should certainly take advantage of higher liquidity wherever we can, because that's all to the benefit of our ecosystem, isn't it?
I would think so. Yeah, I'm just looking on CoinGecko now. 24-hour volume, still the highest is BSC. That's Lana, Ethereum, Base, and then Arbitrum rounds out kind of the top five. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So Polygon is currently in 10th out of the 24-hour volume, where Polygon does 80 million within the last 24 hours, and you're looking at Binance Smart Chain, which does 2 billion. So quite a substantial volume difference. And I know we kind of had this conversation before when we were talking about, potentially looking at Solana as well. And I know we all agreed that because of their reputation with meme coins, pump and dumps, that, at the time that wasn't where we wanted to go. But, maybe looking at, I think Binance is probably in a better position, in my opinion, than Solana is. But at the end of the day, it's whatever we collectively decide as a group on what we want to do. But I guess we've got, obviously, these new V3, V4 pools coming. We've got base coming. So it's quite a bit of change compared to what I would say, legacy liquidity providers are probably used to. So I don't know if we kind of want to walk before we run, or if we want to just keep, pushing the throttle. But I'm okay with Binance, but I'm open to hearing what everybody else has to think. So.
I guess it also
I'm
depends.
I'm definitely
Sorry.
open to it. I mean, we could get some liquidity on there, like just like we did on base, and just see if there's any appetite for it, or any like sort of, if we can start to, see what happens. But yeah, so I'm open to it too.
Do you guys know if we can connect the Binance Smart Chain to the Telcon network via XLR?
Let me go check.
I don't know. I would assume so. I mean, it's L2
I would assume
EVM.
A pretty big one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Because I think it's all about getting the most liquidity for the Telcoin network. So I think we have to pick blockchains that can connect to our network.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
So I'm looking now, selected chains, Binance, BNB chain is there. Yeah. So you technically, we could have Base, we could have Arbitrum, we could have Ethereum, we could have Polygon, we can have BNB, we can have Avalanche, Cosmos, like there's a whole Optimism. There's a whole list of different ones. So once there's that integration with the bridge functionality of Telcoin Network, I think essentially anything that is running through Axelar, we can essentially go after and try to develop that particular chain to broaden the ecosystem in general. Because I think Solana was different too from that perspective, where it wasn't an ERC 720, right? Whereas all of these other chains that I think are connected through Axelar are. So it just makes that that process a lot smoother and a lot easier in terms of functionality, work, costing, all that kind of stuff too. Okay. Well, let's put that on kind of the back burner for now. Let's continue to have the discussion about kind of what the next chains are and kind of take it from there. What I was going to bring up though was that if we do decide to keep the foot on the gas and kind of keep things going from that perspective, like what pool would we want to kind of try to look to deprecate? And I'm trying to think, it might be Baton that was talking in the last couple of weeks on Telegram about, the fact now that on Polygon, we essentially have two TELxIP pools, one on Balancer V2, and then the new one that's going to be coming in for, V4. So to me, like, it seems like a logical decision to try to, push as many people that are in that V2 pool to V4 on Polygon, and then potentially use those incentives for either Arbitrum or Binance Smart Chain. So does anybody have any comments on that thought process, or does anybody have any different thoughts?
Yeah, well, you know what I think. I think that we shouldn't have more than two pools per chain, and we don't need all the pools we have on Polygon. So I guess one TELxIP and one TELUSDC per chain maximum would be more than enough to accommodate.
Well, to Mike's comment too, and what he's talking about, Paul. Maybe down the road, it's not USDC, it's EUSD that we pair with. But obviously, we got to wait for that to be coming out with all the banking stuff. But I think in the long term, those would be, if we're only going to stay to two specific pools, per chain, which I don't know if I 100% am aligned with, a maximum of 2, but like I do like the simplicity of it. But yeah, if we want to adjust from, USDC to EUSD to try to push that within the
Yeah,
ecosystem,
I mean, there can be as many
fine with that.
pools on as many chains as we want. We just have to figure, but we could figure out which pool would be
It'll
the
be
best
incentive.
benefit. Yeah, benefit the platform and our users the most with incentives to like create value, and swappability between whether it be digital cash to digital cash or digital cash to volatile asset. We just want to make sure that we're kind of looking at the big picture and figuring out what is going to be the best product.
Where to push the budget. Yep.
Just,
Yeah.
just remind me a little bit, somebody, the incentives that we get allocated from Treasury, was that the same amount expected for year 3 as year 2? You know how we've got 6 pools and we incentivize them by just under 3 million TEL a month, something like that. Our total budget for year 3, is that expected to be the same for incentivization across all pools, or is that up for negotiation? I can't remember.
That'll be based off what the Treasury has remaining. So I think the overall budget for the association is 10% of whatever the Treasury has at year end. So from that perspective, I think we started at 1 billion or whatever the number was, which was why we were allocated 200. So maybe the numbers I have in my head are off, but from my understanding, the budget that goes forward for year 3 will be based off of 10% of what is in the Treasury.
Right. Okay.
So it might be like up or down, which is why I think when we were talking about, our operational kind of safe, that we were going to do it based off of a percentage of what we're allocated as opposed to an actual number, because the budget year to year is going to fluctuate. So if we agreed to, which we already have at 10% on the operational side, then, whatever we're allocated for our annual budget for year 3, then 10% of that will go towards our own TELx operational wallet too.
Right. Okay.
Okay. Okay. Any other comments on Arbitrum or BSC before we move into the post that Matt was talking about with the Coinbase verified pools? Going once, going twice. Okay. Okay, I don't know if you guys had a chance to read that article. I had a chance today to do a once over of it. In the quick read that I had of it, it really just seems like, how you have like verified users on X. Essentially, it sounds like it would work in the same functionality where it would have like additional KYC and stuff like that. And you would need to be a verified user on Coinbase's platform in order to provide liquidity within a verified pool. And you'd also need to be a verified member to swap within that pool. So I think from their perspective, it's a heightened security feature, just making sure they know kind of where the liquidity is coming from. From my perspective, again, it adds, more touch points on, my information that's going out into the world. And I think from that perspective too, it would kind of limit the amount of liquidity potentially within those pools. But from the quick read that I got, that was really the big differentiating factor from what they have now, which is essentially kind of like the paired Uniswap V3, V4 pools to these new verified pools is just more of having a verified user being able to swap and provide liquidity. So I don't know what everybody's thoughts around that. And, once we do go to get everything going on Base, do we want to look at, these verified pools as an option, or do we want to keep it a little bit more open to, the broader crypto space?
I guess it's all about attracting institutional users to use the platform. So I say we wait and see what volume it brings, and then decide if we want to go that way or not.
Yeah,
That's it for me.
That's a good point. Well, yeah, I had a look as well, and I couldn't see. And I'm not that familiar with Coinbase, but I couldn't see if the same range limits for concentrated liquidity applied.
I
For
think that
the
it's
V3. Is that a given that because it's a V3, it works on range limit concentrated liquidity?
yeah.
As
What I
Uniswap.
read, it's all everything is the same as the Uniswap v3, v4, except you have to be KYC to use it and to provide and to swap.
Okay, thanks, Will. Yeah.
Oh, can you guys hear me? Yeah, I was going to say,
Yeah.
I think in the article it does state that it's going to be built on Uniswap v4.
Right.
So like all that functionality that you're talking about with the ranges and all that kind of stuff, that'll all be there. The ability to add hooks, all that kind of stuff will still be there. Really, the big differentiating feature again that I read and that I took from that was that you got to be a verified user on the Coinbase platform within the Coinbase wallet in order to add liquidity and swap within those verified pools. So, Will, it's a good point too that maybe with institutions coming in, they would prefer to have providing their liquidity there. But maybe it's just kind of a monitor and wait and see kind of how things play out. And then we can make a decision. I think we start with, the non-verified kind of pools for now that we already kind of have on base and then see how that goes. And then if we need to transfer those incentives down the road to these verified pools because we think that's the right decision, then I think it's a simple, proposal that we have to put forward to get that done.
Yeah, I hadn't had a chance to read it. I was just kind of skimming it as you guys were talking. It doesn't. I mean, it kind of seems like it's like almost like, hey, like this is verified liquidity, versus unverified. Like, I don't know. I mean, I guess there are a lot of scams out there, but if you're trading on a trusted platform, on Coinbase Wallet, it doesn't matter if it goes through a verified pool or not. Like, there's still, you know what I mean? It just seems like a bunch of buzzwords to me.
That's kind of what I thought while I was reading it too. It's going to lower liquidity in my head too, and then you're going to have like two pools.
Yeah.
Same thing, one
Right.
verified, one not. And then what happens to the slippage rates and this, that, whatever. So
I mean, all the trading is going through aggregators, and they're not verified. I mean, so it's just like a smaller pool. It's probably just ultimately it's just going to be a smaller pool of assets. You're going to have a greater price impact on every trade. I don't know. I'd have to look into it more. It's just my initial reaction is just sort of like, I don't get it. What's the point? But
well, it's probably more for, I think, like the actual institutional users that are, might prefer to have a verified pool in terms of like a security,
Sure.
whatever.
Yeah.
As part of their corporate policy that, in order to be swapping tokens or adding liquidity, this, that, whatever, it's got to be through a more secure avenue, which quote unquote goes through these verified pools. And, maybe it's
Sure.
something
I
like
think
that.
it is good for like a novice liquidity provider, right? Because it provides them some security. Like, oh, this is verified. Like I can go and provide liquidity, and I'm not just like connecting my wallet to like some new DEX,
Yeah.
So yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So I
We'll
think
see how it goes. Yeah.
Wait and see kind of how things go and how it materializes and kind of take it from there. So, okay.
Yeah, once the Coinbase like verified pool liquidity has a metric that we can track, then we'll kind of get an idea of what that looks like. It'll all be on chain. So
Yep. Okay. Any questions from the community based on my agenda? That was it for today. I'm not seeing any questions in the chat. I know Boo had a couple that we kind of already answered already. We'll give it a second here before we shut things down. But any other topics you guys have that you wanted to touch on, bring up?
I think I'm good. I can't think of anything else. Hopefully by next meeting we'll have some progress on the actual stuff we're trying on our new approved proposals, and we'll keep trucking along. But I do think it's important to think about what is next, because you can see how long this takes with these 2-week iterations and all the comms back and forth trying to figure it out. I think it'll get more efficient over time, but like if we want something to happen in June, we have to be talking about it in March. That's kind of how this is seeming to go at this point. And so that's why I think it's important to start thinking down the road and just start batting around ideas.
Yeah, no, I'm perfectly in line with that too. I think even with like these, V4 pools, once we get like that functionality done, and if we need to get those hooks set in place too, like I think adjusting to different chains will be a lot smoother because we should have all of that stuff done already too. It's really just, setting up and pushing the incentives towards. Actually, Mike, from your perspective on like the fee distribution, like is that going to be a challenge to do that script on a weekly basis and push that to like a smart contract on TELx?
I don't think so. I don't think that part's hard. I don't get that impression. I don't know how to do it, but from the people that do, they say that part's fairly straightforward.
Okay, so that's good then. Okay, so once we get an understanding on the voting mechanisms, then really it's just about the timing to give everybody an ample amount of notice to transfer their liquidity to either base or
I think the voting thing should be fairly straightforward too. It's just like approved pools that would be like. That's how we did it in the first place when we set those pools up. And I was doing some testing with that early on before it was released. Yep. If you just added a pool, like the contract of the pool, a smart contract for the base, TELxIP pool in there, and the smart, it would aggregate all that and say, okay, here's your voting power based upon how much TEL you have or how much total liquidity you have staked at that snapshot time. So you could go out of range, in a V4 pool and not. At the snapshot, and you would not have that voting power. So you'd have to make sure that your pool was in range. So I think, but all that I think is fairly simple to do. I would, from my understanding. So I think we should be good there.
That brings up a question. So if you're out of range, you technically don't have any voting power?
If you're out of range at noon, and that's when the snapshot's taken for voting power, I would say yes. You would probably, because a lot of times, like for an election, like the election, you had to delegate your voting power by a certain date, and then there's a snapshot taken at that window of time. But I could be wrong about this, but this is my understanding of it. But that your voting power starts on Wednesday. Is it on how much liquidity you have pooled on Wednesday at noon? If you pulled your liquidity at 12:30, you would still have that voting power.
Yep.
So I think that would be an issue that you'd have to attend to, being in and out of range for voting power too. So if you have a vote coming up and you want your liquidity to count, but you've gone out of range, I think you're going to have to go and remedy that situation if you want the weight of your liquidity pool to count towards that next vote.
And I think it's the most that's the fairest way to go, because you can just provide liquidity out of range and provide a huge amount and have a huge voting power without really providing liquidity. So I guess that's the same as incentives. If you don't have skin in the game, you don't have voting power. That makes sense.
Yeah, that's the fairest.
No, I hear you. I'm just thinking of a scenario where like snapshot is taking place and a high level of volatility randomly happens, right before snapshot, and 80% of the, liquidity is out of range because of that high level of volatility. Like I don't want to necessarily, deny people voting because of that high volatility that, is outside of their control. Like
Yeah,
I
but
understand what you guys mean by like the ranges and having fees and incentives based off of that. But like in my head, if you're providing liquidity to the pool, similar to how we're doing with V2, you have voting rights. You're providing liquidity in the pool, whether or not it's in range or out of range.
It could be like if you had liquidity provided within range within a week of the beginning of the vote or whatever it is. Like there can be parameters set, and maybe it's not just a minute to minute snapshot, but it's like I was providing liquidity within the past 28 days and whatever it is, and I can use my voting power for that. But I don't, but there has to be some fairness to the system too. To Will's point, like you can't just say like if you have the NFT in your wallet, but you've never actually been in range, you shouldn't qualify. Your vote won't qualify because you actually haven't provided any liquidity, right? So it has to be like a metric that we use for that.
Well, I'd like to see kind of what, I don't know if there's like a precedent or something else that's done in the past. I don't know. I think I got to think about that a little bit more, but I don't know.
Let's talk to our guys and we'll figure that out. But but I think we do need to have that piece sorted so that it's very clear, and whatever the rules are, everybody's aware of them and then can. Oh gosh, it's funny. I just got the notification that our TELx Council Meeting is starting. So yeah, something was screwed up in my calendar, but also means we've gone about an hour.
we have, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm with Andrew on that point as well, because you are still providing liquidity, you're just not earning fees. You've still got that TEL, and it still should contribute to your voting power. So
that's true. Yeah,
because I'm just thinking too, like if even if you put a time parameter on it, like then where do you differentiate between your technical voting power, Mike, and Ty's and Will's and mine? Like where do you set that date? Like is it the highest level of liquidity within that time frame, the lowest level of liquidity within that time frame? Like if you're taking, you went in 21 days ago, but I'm only in 14 days ago, right? Like the value of that pair is going to be different. So I don't know. In my head, I think we got to provide the voting to everybody that is providing liquidity. And then the benefit from being within range is the incentives and the fees.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense to me. I could be on board with that.
Yeah,
and
sorry.
We could
I'm
kind of
sorry,
see
guys.
if there's
I'm not. I'm really not. I mean, someone with a billion TEL could put it really out of range and get all the voting power without providing liquidity. So no, that's really a no for me. It's not possible. I understand your point. I understand your point about volatility, but I guess it's just about bad luck. When the snapshot was taken, you were out of range, so you can't vote, and that's too bad for you. But to give voting power to this particular situation, you open the doors to elections being flawed, basically.
But to that point, Will, what's different from V2? Like right now, if I had a billion TEL that I wanted to put in before a snapshot vote, I can do the same thing right now.
But when you do that, then during the snapshot, you are actually providing liquidity.
Yeah, but I would be providing liquidity in V4 too. If I have a billion TEL and I want to put it into V4 versus a V2 pool, I can do it, seconds before the snapshot has taken place, and the same,
well, if your range is between 1 TEL equals 1 ETH and 10 ETH, you know that you're never going to reach that range. So you're not really providing liquidity, right?
No, I understand from like a concentrated liquidity perspective and, providing active liquidity for swaps. I understand that side of it, right? But like in the V2 pools now, like an 80-20 pool on Balancer, I could provide, X amount of money an hour before the snapshot is taken, and I get all of that money counted towards the snapshot vote as part of my voting power, right?
Sure. Yeah. You could still manipulate the system, and just be barely in range. You could have $1 on the Ethereum side and a billion TEL on the other side, and put it in there. So like you're not gonna. But I think that those are very like outlier circumstances. That not that I don't I guess we haven't seen that sort of manipulation yet, where people try to just put a whole bunch of liquidity into so their vote can count. It could happen down the road, but I don't think it's been an issue to date.
I think I'd be more pissed if I had all this liquidity that I'd been providing for the last month or year, and then because of something outside my control, the market dips and suddenly I'm not allowed to vote. I think that's a terrible
Right.
situation to be in.
I agree.
So
I mean,
Yeah.
that's not really outside of your control, because when you know that elections are coming and you're going very close to your range boundary, so you have to readjust if you want to be sure to be counted for the votes.
Yeah,
So
you're
that's
just
not really
asking
out
for
of your control.
you're just asking for more people to stay on top of what's going on, though. That's the only caveat. Anyways, we
Sure.
can continue the conversation after maybe the next time. We can
Yeah.
digest it a little bit and think about it a little bit more.
Yeah, I see both sides of that. I mean, I don't know. I don't know which side of the vote I would fall on that, but I see it both ways.
Okay.
I
Well, I
do
guess
actually-
let's wait and hear back from Amir on what is involved in these hooks from Uniswap and how they've already got it set up for voting,
Yeah.
potentially already through snapshot stuff, and then we
Yeah.
can take what they have as like their base and kind of take it from there.
And I think it would be a good question to ask Parker too, because he's the one that designs all this stuff and he thinks about this stuff all the time. He'd probably have a pretty good rationale for an answer on how we would do that. So we can ask him too.
Okay.
Yep.
I do want to just introduce something that I think we talked about last time, and that's we should be thinking about, maybe not discussing now, but thinking about how we manage our development budget, because as Andrew alluded to, TEL dipped since last time and our available budget kind of lost its USD equivalent. So we need to be thinking a little bit about how we protect the value of our development budget, either in providing liquidity or converting a percentage when the price is right, or whatever we decide. But it's something we need to be thinking about for the future.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely on the radar of how and what we do. I just I don't know what kind of strategy we want to put together for that. Like it's tough this year too, because we're kind of waiting on the bull market, and I don't think we want to start selling anything right now.
Yeah.
But obviously, within those last 2 weeks, seeing your budget drop by 50% is not ideal. Whether or not that is going to be temporary and short-lived, I think that is the hope for all of us, not only for our budgets, but probably for our own personal financial situation.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
yeah. Hey, in the last 5 minutes, we've gotten a little uptick, so we're back. We're back, baby.
So yeah, I don't know. Let's continue to talk about that, and maybe we set some targets, and maybe
Yeah.
we come with like 5 targets or something like that, and then at each interval we sell, I don't know, maybe 10% of the budget. I don't know. I'm just spitballing right now. But
Yeah. No, I think that's good.
We need to be thinking about. Yeah.
Okay, well let's take that one back and continue to think about that as well too. I don't know how soon these invoices are coming in with the work that the TAO is doing for the pools, the analytics, and I didn't get any update from Grant on costing for this operational wallet. Will, for your proposal, so I don't know if there is going to be a cost associated to that or not. But I'm assuming that's going to be the one that's going to finish fastest if they're going to get it done by the end of this week.
There's zero. There's I can set up a safe for the TELx in 3 minutes, and there's zero cost. So there shouldn't be any cost to that.
Okay. Well, yeah. Grant said he was getting everything coordinated. So I don't know, Mike, if you want to touch base with him, and maybe you guys can work together on getting that done. And then just let us know when it is done, and then we'll just have to figure out the multi-sig side of things. And I think what did we decide? 3 out of 6?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I'll shoot it out to the community again if there's any questions. I'm not seeing anything coming in the chat. So with that being said, then maybe let's shut it down. We hit our hour. Okay, I'll put together the recap for the meeting. I'll post it in our Discord group chat, and if there's anything I missed, just let me know, and I can add it to the list for the recap for the next meeting, which is on April 2nd, 2 p.m. Eastern time. Anybody have any issues, concerns with that one?
I'm good.
No,
I
good.
think I'm good. As long as I
Okay.
get in my calendar correctly.
Daylight savings, I know. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
I don't know
Arizona just screws everything up. Well, because I thought, like, weren't we meeting? I felt like our last meeting, it was like 2:00 in Kansas City, but maybe it was 1:00. I don't know. I'm just confused. It's all good.
You're traveling too much, Mike.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Good stuff. All right. Well, thanks,
Yeah.
gents. Appreciate it as always. Oh, wait, I just want to see comments. Oh, thanks all. Appreciate it. Thanks. Obviously we'll be chatting within the next 2 weeks, but next time we chat
All
live
right.
will be in April. So we'll talk
Looking
to you guys
forward
soon.
to it, guys. Yeah.
See you next time. Bye.
Okay.
See you guys.
Yeah. See you guys.
See ya.